The night was quiet in Brentwood, the kind of silence that makes even the smallest sound seem loud, a calm before a storm no one could predict. Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle Singer Reiner were known for their warmth, their charm, and the brilliance they brought into the world. Yet in the privacy of their home, shadows had begun to gather. Their son, Nick Reiner, moved calmly near the family residence just hours before the unthinkable, a bag slung over his shoulder, appearing ordinary to anyone who might have seen him pass by. Yet that ordinary calm masked a tension that would erupt into tragedy, a sequence of events that would leave Hollywood and the world stunned. Surveillance footage showed him walking with a deliberate slowness, a hollow gaze, and an eerie composure that seemed out of place for someone hours away from committing an act that would destroy the lives of those who had given him everything. 5 days had passed since the Brentwood tragedy, and every new piece of information revealed a darker, more unsettling layer. Forensic reports suggested multiple severe injuries inflicted upon Rob and Michelle, including a deep wound across Rob's neck, a violent mark that carried a chilling, silent message. It was an act of intention, a precision that made the horror even more incomprehensible. The world knew Rob as a charismatic director, Michelle as a graceful and kind woman. Yet behind the closed doors of their home, a nightmare was unfolding, one that would forever shatter the perception of security and family. Investigators believe the seeds of the tragedy had been planted earlier that night at a Christmas party hosted by Conan O'Brien. Witnesses noticed Nick's erratic behavior, the subtle tremors of instability that hinted at something deeper. A minor argument at first, a tense exchange of words, escalated in ways no one could have foreseen. By the time he left the party, Nick appeared detached, almost in a daze, moving through public spaces as if the act he was about to commit had not yet occurred, or as if he had already prepared for it with cold precision. He checked into a nearby hotel, his movements calm, measured, almost mechanical, a stark contrast to the chaos he had left behind or was about to unleash. Later that morning, the horrific discovery would be made. The massage therapist arriving for an appointment found no answer at the Reiner's door. Panic spread as calls were made, and within minutes, Rob and Michelle were found lifeless. Forensic analysis confirmed that the injuries were extensive, deliberate, and brutal, far beyond what initial reports suggested. Each wound told a story of intent, of rage, of a personal invasion into the lives of those who had nurtured him. Nick's intimate knowledge of the house, the access he had without breaking a lock, and his familiarity with every corner, combined with his calm demeanor, created a chilling image that would haunt investigators and the public alike. The tragedy was compounded by the revelation that a portion of the family inheritance was used to hire Alan Jackson, a top-tier defense attorney, to represent Nick. The very wealth and protection that Rob and Michelle had built to support their family now became entwined in the legal defense of the son accused of ending their lives. As the story emerged, details about Nick's life, his early struggles with substance abuse, and the repeated cycles of rehabilitation painted a complex portrait of a young man trapped by addiction, expectation, and inner turmoil. Every moment leading up to the tragedy, from his appearance at the Christmas party to his silent movements through Brentwood streets, to the final discovery of his parents' bodies, constructed a narrative that blurred the line between premeditation and the devastating consequences of untreated mental illness. The world watched, horrified and captivated, as a family that had once embodied creativity, love, and success became the epicenter of a story defined by pain, loss, and incomprehensible tragedy. In every frame of surveillance, in every forensic finding, and in every eyewitness account, the story of the Reiner's final hours revealed the delicate and often terrifying intersection of family, privilege, addiction, and the limits of love. It is a story that grips the imagination, evokes the deepest sympathy, and forces reflection on the fragility of life and the unexpected darkness that can emerge even in the brightest of homes. Nick Reiner grew up in a world that seemed dazzling to outsiders, yet beneath the lights and the glamour, there was a constant pressure that few could understand. His father, Rob was a celebrated director whose name commanded respect and attention in Hollywood, a man who could transform ordinary moments into cinematic brilliance. His mother, Michelle, carried herself with grace and warmth, maintaining a sense of stability and care in a household surrounded by fame. From a young age, Nick was exposed to the spotlight, the expectations, and the scrutiny that came with being the child of well-known parents. Every gesture, every decision, even moments that seemed private, were colored by the weight of attention and anticipation. He attended parties, award shows, and gatherings that other children could only dream of, yet the privilege came with an invisible cost, a sense of isolation and the feeling that he could never fully belong. The life of luxury and opportunity was intertwined with a profound loneliness, a quiet disconnect from the very world that nurtured him. Early signs of instability began to emerge in Nick's teenage years. By the age of 15, he had started experimenting with drugs, initially heroin and later cocaine, setting him on a path that would become increasingly perilous. Rob and Michelle recognized the danger and responded with a mixture of concern, intervention, and hope. They enrolled him in rehabilitation programs at an age when many teenagers were only beginning to confront the challenges of adolescence, believing that early treatment could offer a chance at recovery. But the process was far from linear. 17 or 18 rehab stints within just a few years created a pattern of hope and disappointment, a cycle of temporary improvement followed by relapse, testing the limits of parental endurance and love. Despite repeated failures, Rob and Michelle remained steadfast. They invested countless hours in creative projects, hoping structure and purpose could guide Nick toward stability. Michelle offered her unwavering support, ensuring that even the smallest steps of progress were acknowledged, reinforcing a fragile sense of trust and possibility. Their efforts extended beyond therapy and treatment. Nick was allowed to return to the family home multiple times, given the chance to rebuild in a familiar environment. These gestures were not just acts of kindness, but calculated attempts to provide safety, supervision, and emotional grounding. Yet each relapse, each moment of instability, created a sense of frustration and helplessness, reminding them that love alone could not shield a person from the consequences of addiction and mental health struggles. Nick's adolescence and young adulthood were marked by movement between homes, states, and rehabilitation facilities. He drifted from Maine to New Jersey to Texas, often relying on transient support networks and engaging in high-risk behaviors to survive. Rob and Michelle watched from afar, powerless to intervene directly, yet continuing to hope that each return, each attempt at sobriety, could offer a turning point. The family's efforts to maintain connection and guidance included collaboration on creative projects. In 2015, at the age of 22, Nick briefly regained stability and worked with his father on Being Charlie, a semi-autobiographical film reflecting his personal struggles. For a moment, it seemed that redemption was within reach, that the bond with his parents could facilitate a meaningful recovery. However, this fragile progress was shattered by subsequent relapses. By 2018, Nick's substance use intensified, and he faced near-fatal consequences from drug-related incidents, including a medical emergency on a flight caused by cocaine use. The deterioration extended beyond physical danger. He caused significant property damage in the family guest house, an outward expression of internal chaos and emotional volatility. These actions marked a critical juncture, a breaking point that necessitated another intervention. Rob and Michelle, recognizing the severity of the situation, placed him back in structured treatment, hoping that sustained supervision and familial involvement might prevent further decline. By 2020, they permitted him to return to the main residence under their supervision, a decision reflecting both hope and necessity. Even as they attempted to maintain a semblance of normalcy, the tension within the household grew. Friends and associates observed increased erratic behavior, unpredictable moods, and incidents that highlighted the fragility of Nick's recovery. Rob and Michelle's constant vigilance, their attempts to provide structure, guidance, and care, were met with mixed results, revealing the limits of intervention even by the most devoted parents. Each effort, each gesture of support became part of a larger narrative of struggle, resilience, and heartbreak. Nick's life was a continuous cycle of attempts at rehabilitation, intermittent stability, and recurring relapse, each episode leaving emotional scars and testing the capacity of parental love. The Reiners' household, meant to be a sanctuary and a place of restoration, increasingly mirrored the turbulence of Nick's internal battles, illustrating how even the most carefully constructed safety nets can fail in the face of relentless addiction and psychological strain. Throughout these years, Rob and Michelle's commitment never wavered. They sought to balance love with discipline, support with boundaries, hoping to steer their son toward recovery without pushing him further into isolation. Yet, despite decades of effort, the unpredictability of mental illness and substance dependence created a sense of looming tragedy, a tension that, while subtle, hinted at the eventual collapse that would later engulf the family. The story of Nick's upbringing, his struggles with addiction, and the repeated cycles of rehabilitation highlight the complexities of parental love, the intersection of privilege and vulnerability, and the human capacity for both resilience and destruction. Rob and Michelle's unwavering efforts underscore a central theme: that love, no matter how profound, cannot always prevent tragedy. Their sacrifices, their hopes, and their relentless dedication shaped a household defined by both extraordinary opportunity and profound fragility, setting the stage for the events that would ultimately shatter their lives. In every small action, every careful intervention, and every moment of hope, there was an underlying tension, a quiet acknowledgement that despite their best efforts, some forces within Nick's mind and history remained beyond their control, foreshadowing a climax that no parent could have anticipated. The years of struggle, care, and resilience that defined the Reiner family's attempts to save Nick create a profound backdrop to the tragedy, providing insight into the interplay of love, mental health, and human limitation in a story that is both deeply personal and universally poignant. The night of the tragedy unfolded with a tension that had been building for months, a culmination of fear, frustration, and unresolved turmoil. The Reiner family returned from the Christmas party hosted by Conan O'Brien with a mix of forced smiles and quiet apprehension. What should have been a joyful evening ended in a somber drive back to Brentwood, where the familiar warmth of home could not mask the underlying strain. Nick, restless and agitated, refused to speak, his eyes darting, hands trembling, a storm barely contained beneath the surface. Rob attempted gentle words, a father's caution, placing a hand on his son's shoulder, urging calm and composure. Michelle hovered close, her concern palpable, torn between guiding her son and protecting her husband. Even in the car, subtle cues. The tension in Nick's posture, the intermittent glances, the silent yet charged energy, hinted at the danger that lay ahead, a foreshadowing of the horrific events yet to come. Hours later, in the stillness of the night, Nick entered the main house where his parents slept, his movements eerily precise. There were no signs of forced entry. He had keys and intimate knowledge of the layout, a familiarity that allowed him to move undetected, transforming a home of love and security into a scene of chaos and devastation. The forensic evidence revealed a calculated assault, multiple stab wounds inflicted with force and intent, the deep cut across Rob's neck a message both physical and psychological. Michelle suffered equally grievous injuries, the violence unrelenting, each blow a stark testament to the deliberate nature of the act. This was not an impulsive outburst. It was sustained, methodical, and profoundly tragic. Investigators described the assault as requiring physical strength, close contact, and control, highlighting the stark contrast between Nick's calm exterior in public spaces and the brutality he unleashed in private. After leaving the house, Nick continued to move with unsettling composure. He checked into a nearby hotel, traversed Santa Monica streets, and was captured by surveillance purchasing a sports drink at a gas station, restless yet remarkably controlled. Each step, each action, underscored the chilling duality of his behavior. A son accused of murdering his parents, yet operating with an almost mechanical detachment. The use of family inheritance to hire Alan Jackson, a high-profile defense attorney, further compounded the public's disbelief. The wealth and privilege that Rob and Michelle had nurtured to provide opportunities for their family now became entangled in the defense of the person responsible for destroying them. The contrast was stark, the narrative almost surreal, amplifying the sense of tragedy and disbelief. As the day progressed, the discovery of Rob and Michelle's bodies by a massage therapist sent shockwaves through the community. The initial response, the immediate calls, the arrival of first responders, and the forensic processing of the scene revealed the full extent of the horror. Nick had left traces of his presence, but the weapon, likely an item taken from within the house, reflected both his knowledge of his parents' environment and the chilling intimacy of the attack. The repeated injuries, the precision, and the calculated nature suggested a sequence that was both deliberate and sustained, a stark reminder of the fragility of safety and the limits of familial protection. Media coverage intensified as details emerged. Surveillance footage, forensic analysis, and eyewitness accounts painted a picture of Nick's day following the murders, a series of movements that seemed disconnected from reality, yet entirely coherent within his own framework. The juxtaposition of his calm behavior in public with the violence perpetrated within his home created a dissonance that fascinated and horrified the public alike. Questions arose about motivation, mental health, and the impact of long-standing substance abuse, raising debates over the interplay of addiction, mental instability, and accountability. Friends and associates of the Reiner family recalled prior signs of instability at events and on sets, moments once dismissed as eccentricity, now reframed as warning signs that were tragically unheeded. The night of the incident had started as an ordinary return from a holiday gathering, but quickly spiraled into a catastrophic event that forever altered the lives of all involved. Neighbors reported muffled arguments, minor disturbances that, in retrospect, were preludes to disaster. The sequence from tense exchanges in the car, to Nick's entry into the master bedroom, to the systematic assault, highlighted how rapidly ordinary tensions can escalate when compounded by unresolved psychological and behavioral issues. Each act, from the argument at the party to the final moments of violence, was a link in a chain culminating in irrevocable loss. The deliberate nature of the attack, coupled with Nick's prior history of instability, created a narrative that challenged investigators, lawyers, and the public to reconcile familial love with the destructive consequences of untreated mental illness and substance abuse. Throughout the investigation, forensic teams meticulously reconstructed the timeline. Nick's actions, from leaving the party, driving home, committing the assault, and moving through public spaces afterward, demonstrated both planning and an unsettling detachment. His ability to navigate familiar spaces, combined with his intimate knowledge of the home, rendered the assault both efficient and horrifying. Public and private reactions merged in a complex tapestry. Media coverage dissected every detail. Friends and colleagues mourned, and the broader audience struggled to understand how such a tragedy could unfold in a household marked by wealth, opportunity, and devoted parental care. Simultaneously, the family faced the stark reality of legal proceedings. The use of estate funds to retain legal representation created a paradoxical scene, a family devastated by loss supporting the defense of the very individual accused of their destruction. The narrative extended beyond simple criminality into ethical, psychological, and social considerations, highlighting the intersection of privilege, love, and tragedy. Nick's prior struggles with addiction and mental health were central to the discourse, providing context but not absolution. The public was left grappling with questions of morality, justice, and the limits of familial intervention, while the Reiner's story became a cautionary tale of the fragile boundaries between care and catastrophe. The events of that night, the calculated brutality and the subsequent public exposure through media coverage, surveillance footage, and forensic findings constructed a narrative both compelling and devastating. Each revelation, every new detail, intensified the emotional gravity of the story, illustrating how a family's history, struggles with mental health, and the pressures of expectation can converge into an irreversible calamity. For the world, the Reiners' tragedy was a stark reminder of human vulnerability, the limits of parental love, and the unpredictable consequences when trauma, addiction, and unresolved psychological distress intersect. In the hours, days, and weeks that followed, investigators, family, and the public pieced together a timeline that revealed the depth of calculation and the eerie calm with which Nick moved. Every surveillance clip, every forensic sample, every witness statement contributed to a portrait of a son shaped by privilege and struggle, whose actions on that December night shattered the lives of those who had loved him unconditionally. The narrative, while deeply personal, resonates universally. A story of expectation, failure, love, and destruction, unfolding in a home once filled with laughter and hope, now marked forever by the consequences of choices, circumstances, and human fragility. The aftermath of the tragedy rippled far beyond the walls of the Brentwood home. Friends, neighbors, and the broader Hollywood community struggled to comprehend the sudden and violent loss of Rob and Michelle Reiner. The reality of their deaths, their lives taken by someone they had nurtured, loved, and protected, left an emptiness that could not be easily filled. Those who had known the couple spoke of their warmth, their generosity, their unwavering commitment to family. And yet the narrative of that final night revealed a painful contrast between the public persona and the intimate horror that had unfolded behind closed doors. The shock was compounded by the knowledge that Nick, their own son, had perpetrated the act, leaving the world grappling with a sense of disbelief, anger, and sorrow that intertwined inextricably. As the investigation progressed, forensic teams and law enforcement pieced together the meticulous sequence of events, each detail heightening the sense of horror. The evidence suggested that Nick acted with deliberate intent, his actions calculated and precise, his knowledge of the house making the assault both efficient and devastating. The severity of the injuries and the methodical nature of the attack underscored a reality far removed from impulsive violence. It was sustained, close-range, and deeply intentional. Rob and Michelle, people who had spent decades shaping narratives on film and nurturing the lives around them, became victims not just of a violent act, but of the complex consequences of addiction, untreated mental illness, and the burdens of expectation. The Reiner family's loss resonated on multiple levels. There was the personal devastation, the immeasurable grief experienced by surviving relatives, friends, and colleagues. Each account revealed a dimension of sorrow that words alone could scarcely convey. Witnesses described the disbelief and shock that followed the discovery, the silent anguish that filled the spaces once animated by laughter and conversation. The domestic sphere, a place once associated with safety and love, had been transformed into a scene of chaos and loss, a stark reminder of how quickly life can pivot from ordinary to catastrophic. Public attention intensified as media outlets disseminated surveillance footage, forensic updates, and eyewitness testimonies. The juxtaposition of Nick's calm, detached behavior in public with the brutality of his actions in private created a collective unease, a fascination intertwined with horror. Discussions about mental health, substance abuse, and familial responsibility became central to public discourse as commentators, psychologists, and ordinary observers attempted to make sense of the unimaginable. The story illuminated the often overlooked realities of addiction and mental illness, illustrating how untreated trauma and escalating instability can culminate in irreversible consequences, regardless of privilege, opportunity, or parental devotion. The use of the Reiner estate to fund Nick's legal defense further complicated the public perception of the tragedy. It introduced ethical and social dilemmas that extended beyond the immediate crime. How could a family devastated by loss reconcile, supporting the defense of the individual accused of inflicting that loss? How could society understand the complexities of wealth, power, and legal rights when layered over a backdrop of intimate familial destruction? These questions intensified the emotional resonance of the story, prompting debates about morality, responsibility, and the limits of love in the face of human fragility. Family members faced profound emotional challenges. The surviving Reiners, grappling with grief, betrayal, and the public scrutiny of their loss, were forced to navigate a landscape of legal, social, and personal ramifications. The act itself, coupled with the subsequent legal proceedings and public attention, made private mourning nearly impossible, as each day brought renewed exposure to the details of the tragedy. The psychological toll was immense, compounded by the knowledge that efforts to guide and protect Nick over the years had ultimately been insufficient. Each recollection of past attempts, rehabilitation programs, collaborative projects, supervised living, carried the weight of what could have been a haunting reminder that even profound love and persistent intervention cannot always prevent catastrophic outcomes. The broader Hollywood community also felt the impact, with colleagues and friends reflecting on the fragility of human life, even amidst wealth and privilege. Tributes poured in, expressing admiration for the lives Rob and Michelle had built, mourning the loss of their guidance, creativity, and presence. Statements from peers highlighted the profound void left in both personal and professional spheres, a stark contrast to the violent and untimely nature of their passing. The grief extended beyond personal connection to a collective reflection on the vulnerabilities that can exist behind the facade of fame, success, and social standing. The public discourse extended to debates about addiction and accountability. Nick's history of substance abuse and repeated relapses became central to discussions of motive and mental state, raising complex questions about culpability and mitigation. While experts noted the influence of addiction on cognitive and emotional control, the deliberate nature of the actions that night complicated any argument of diminished responsibility. The interplay between personal struggle and premeditated violence created a narrative that was both tragic and unsettling, emphasizing the limits of understanding and intervention in cases where mental health, addiction, and intent collide. Legal observers highlighted the unique challenges faced by the prosecution and defense. The accumulation of evidence, surveillance footage, forensic data, eyewitness accounts, painted a detailed and troubling portrait of the events. The juxtaposition of Nick's prior history, the family's efforts to intervene, and the violent outcome created a context that was legally and morally complex. Each piece of information informed the narrative, shaping the proceedings and framing the public's understanding of what had occurred. The societal impact was profound, prompting reflection on the effectiveness of mental health interventions, the influence of familial support, and the societal responsibility to address escalating risk factors before they manifest in tragedy. Amid the grief, the Reiner family's story serves as a cautionary tale of human vulnerability, illustrating the fragile balance between care, opportunity, and the unpredictability of behavior shaped by addiction and psychological instability. The emotional reverberations extend far beyond the immediate victims, touching friends, colleagues, and the global public who followed the case. The intersection of family loyalty, privilege, public scrutiny, and private tragedy underscores the complexity of human relationships and the devastating consequences when circumstances spiral beyond control. In every account, every forensic finding, and every detail revealed, the impact of that December night continues to resonate, leaving a lasting imprint on the narrative of both a family and a community grappling with the profound weight of loss and the enduring questions of how such a calamity could unfold despite the deepest intentions, love, and efforts to prevent it. In the quiet corners of the Reiner household, away from cameras and public adoration, there existed a pattern of small, almost imperceptible moments that spoke volumes about the family's efforts to keep Nick on track. Friends and associates later recalled glimpses of Rob and Michelle's tireless devotion, their attempts to create stability where chaos had taken root. Long before the tragedy, they had structured daily routines, monitored therapy sessions, and fostered opportunities for Nick to regain confidence and purpose. Rob often spent hours with him, reviewing scripts, discussing storyboards, or sharing creative insights, attempting to channel energy and emotion into projects that could offer structure and a sense of accomplishment. Michelle, meanwhile, navigated the delicate balance of protecting her son while also maintaining the household, quietly guiding him through daily life, soothing tensions, and attending to the subtle emotional cues that signaled his mental state. Even in their private life, the Reiners' efforts were meticulous and relentless. Relatives recalled nights spent awake listening for signs of relapse, or responding to cryptic messages that suggested Nick was struggling. Friends spoke of phone calls that stretched into hours, conversations that oscillated between encouragement and confrontation, all meant to provide the support that could, perhaps, prevent another spiral. Each intervention, no matter how small, carried the weight of hope and the fear of failure. Rob and Michelle's love was constant, but measured by vigilance. Every action was an attempt to intervene before the shadows could overwhelm their son. These stories, shared only with trusted confidants, now form a tapestry of quiet heroism and painstaking care, highlighting the depths of parental devotion in the face of persistent adversity. Colleagues and collaborators from the film industry recounted times when Rob had gently but firmly insisted that Nick remain engaged in projects, believing that the structure of work and creativity could anchor him. There were days when Nick's participation was tentative, hesitant, or erratic, yet Rob persisted, offering mentorship, patience, and understanding. On certain mornings, Michelle would leave notes of encouragement in the kitchen, reminders that he was capable, loved, and never alone. These gestures, small as they were, became symbols of hope and resilience, even as the underlying challenges persisted. They also revealed the intricate balance the couple maintained between discipline and compassion, the duality of guiding a child who had the weight of addiction and instability pressing upon him from every side. Some of the most poignant moments emerged through account from friends and extended family. One longtime family acquaintance described an afternoon spent with Michelle in the living room, reviewing medical records and treatment plans. She had been quietly coordinating care for Nick, tracking medications, therapy appointments, and counselors' recommendations, a behind-the-scenes effort that required meticulous attention and emotional endurance. These endeavors were largely invisible to the public, yet they exemplified the Reiners' commitment to their son's well-being. Even when Nick resisted, relapsed, or withdrew, Rob and Michelle continued, their resolve unwavering, an effort that could not erase the inevitability of the events to come, but represented a profound moral and emotional investment. Neighbors also recalled subtle signs of tension and intervention in the days and weeks leading up to the tragedy. Small interactions, such as Rob walking with Nick through the neighborhood to provide structure or Michelle engaging in gentle conversation to gauge his mood, were often unnoticed or dismissed by outsiders. In retrospect, these moments appeared prescient, signaling both care and the limits of influence. They demonstrated that every precaution had been taken, every opportunity for guidance extended, yet some forces, addiction, mental instability, and unresolved trauma, operated beyond even the most vigilant parental oversight. Those who attended social gatherings with the family noticed quieter patterns as well. At events, Rob and Michelle often positioned themselves strategically to monitor Nick, subtly intervening when his behavior became erratic or withdrawn. Guests recalled moments where Rob would guide him gently away from potentially triggering situations, or Michelle would distract him with conversation, a protective choreography designed to mitigate stress and avoid escalation. These small acts, largely unnoticed at the time, revealed the continuous balancing act of care, vigilance, and hope that characterized the family's daily life. Even the most ordinary interactions carried immense emotional significance, reflecting the ongoing struggle to maintain equilibrium in an environment fraught with uncertainty. Beyond these efforts, the Reiners' private communications revealed the depth of their concern and strategic thinking. Emails, phone records, and personal notes indicated careful planning to coordinate therapy, housing, and engagement in safe, structured activities. Rob would often check in multiple times a day, offering guidance, reassurance, or gentle correction, striving to instill discipline without breaking the fragile trust they had cultivated. Michelle, equally dedicated, served as the emotional anchor, observing subtle shifts in mood, tone, and behavior, often anticipating needs before they were voiced. Together, they created a framework intended to support recovery, a network of interventions that reflected both love and practical foresight. Even as they invested themselves wholly, the Reiners were keenly aware of the unpredictability inherent in Nick's struggles. Friends and family recounted the emotional toll this vigilance took, the constant stress, the sleepless nights, and the near-constant worry that each day could bring new challenges. Yet, they persisted, embodying a devotion that was unwavering, even in the face of repeated setbacks. Every phone call, every visit, every gentle intervention was a testament to their belief in the possibility of redemption, a reflection of the extraordinary patience and compassion that characterized their approach. These quiet, painstaking efforts, largely invisible to the outside world, were the foundation of a family trying to hold on to hope against a tide of growing instability. Looking back, the stories of these behind-the-scenes moments highlight the complex, often unseen dimensions of family struggle. They reveal a pattern of relentless care, meticulous attention to behavior, and a profound moral commitment to nurturing a loved one despite the unpredictable outcomes. The quiet acts of guidance, intervention, and hope demonstrate the extent to which Rob and Michelle dedicated themselves to Nick's recovery, even as circumstances spiraled beyond their control. It is within these unspoken narratives that the depth of tragedy is fully realized. The relentless devotion of two parents, the unseen battles waged daily, and the heart-wrenching reality that, despite every measure, even the strongest love cannot always prevent loss. These lapsed moments, private efforts, and unnoticed gestures form a rich, deeply emotional backdrop, allowing the audience to appreciate the full scope of the family struggle. They emphasize not only the severity of the tragedy, but also the profound humanity, persistence, and love that characterized the Reiners' response to a situation that ultimately proved tragically uncontrollable. The story of Rob and Michelle Reiner is not simply a tale of tragedy. It is a meditation on the fragile balance between love, responsibility, and the unpredictable course of life. Throughout their years, the couple embodied both public success and private dedication, building careers, relationships, and a home filled with laughter, creativity, and care. Yet, their lives were also defined by an intimate struggle that few could see, a daily confrontation with the challenges posed by a child caught between potential and peril. In reflecting on the Reiners' legacy, one cannot separate the brilliance of their accomplishments from the depth of their sacrifices. Their love, unwavering and profound, served as a guiding force, yet it was ultimately insufficient to avert the tragedy that befell them. This juxtaposition of achievement and heartbreak underscores the complexity of human experience, revealing the tension between hope and inevitability. Nick's story, intertwined with his parents' devotion, provides a lens through which we can examine the limits of intervention, the unpredictability of mental health, and the consequences of unresolved trauma. The years of rehabilitation, guidance, and support highlight a profound truth: that even the most meticulously applied care cannot always shield against the forces of addiction and psychological instability. Rob and Michelle's repeated efforts to provide structure, supervision, and love were heroic, yet they also illuminate a somber reality about human vulnerability. The tragedy forces reflection on the intricate interplay between nurture and circumstance, the degree to which environment, genetics, and personal choices converge to shape outcomes that may defy expectation, despite the best efforts of those who love us. The legacy of the Reiners extends beyond the stark details of that December night. It lies in the countless small acts of care, the creative projects shared, the moments of encouragement and correction, and the moral and emotional investment made over decades. Rob's mentorship, Michelle's guidance, and their combined vigilance exemplify a level of commitment that few can fully appreciate. These acts, often invisible to the outside world, form the backbone of a family narrative marked by devotion, resilience, and tireless effort. They are reminders of the depth of parental responsibility and the emotional labor invested in the hope that a child might be guided safely through turbulent years. Public discourse has often focused on the shocking elements of the crime. The precision of the assault, the calculated calmness of Nick in public, and the use of family wealth for legal defense. But within these discussions lies a subtler, enduring lesson. The Reiner story challenges viewers to consider the human dimensions that underlie headlines, the unseen struggles, the quiet battles fought within homes, and the ethical dilemmas faced by families navigating complex mental health and addiction issues. Their experience invites empathy, reflection, and a deeper understanding of the multifaceted nature of tragedy, urging the audience to look beyond the sensational and recognize the profound human elements at play. In contemplating the Reiners' life and loss, one observes a duality, a household of extraordinary opportunity and cultural influence, yet simultaneously a space vulnerable to the unpredictable forces of addiction, instability, and personal crisis. This duality amplifies the poignancy of their story, highlighting the contrast between external success and internal struggle. For those who admired Rob and Michelle for their accomplishments, the tragedy adds layers of complexity, compelling us to reconcile admiration with sorrow, celebration with mourning. Their lives remind us that even those who appear most in control, most accomplished, and most grounded are not immune to the vulnerabilities inherent in human existence. The enduring reflection of this story also lies in its capacity to illuminate societal themes. The intersection of wealth, privilege, and access to support systems did not prevent catastrophe, emphasizing that resources alone cannot mitigate every risk or resolve every personal struggle. Equally, the narrative underscores the significance of early intervention, continuous support, and vigilant care, while simultaneously acknowledging that outcomes are never guaranteed. In this sense, the Reiners' experience serves as a cautionary tale and a source of contemplation, highlighting the limits of human influence in the face of complex behavioral, psychological, and environmental factors. Beyond lessons of caution, the Reiner story also communicates the profound resilience of the human spirit. Rob and Michelle dedicated themselves to their son with unwavering devotion, enduring setbacks, relapses, and moments of despair. They demonstrated that love is a force capable of immense patience, persistence, and moral courage. Even in the face of eventual loss, their commitment exemplifies the highest ideals of parental care, a reminder that striving to nurture, guide, and protect is a worthy endeavor, regardless of the ultimate outcome. Their actions, rooted in empathy, hope, and responsibility, contribute to a legacy that transcends the tragedy itself. In the final analysis, the legacy of Rob and Michelle Reiner is inseparable from both their achievements and the heartbreak that marked the last hours of their lives. It is a legacy of love pursued with diligence, of creativity tempered with care, and of moral courage exercised under extraordinary circumstances. Their story invites reflection on the delicate balance of human life, the impermanence of security, and the power of compassion even when faced with circumstances beyond control. For the audience, it serves as both a caution and an inspiration, a reminder that our actions, our care, and our love matter, even in a world where outcomes are uncertain, and that the impact of dedication and devotion resonates far beyond the immediate events, leaving traces in memory, in conscience, and in the stories we tell about the people we hold dear. As the story of the Reiner family draws toward its conclusion, the weight of their loss lingers long after the initial shock has faded. Rob and Michelle Reiner, once vibrant, creative, and deeply engaged in both public and private life, were taken from the world in a moment of unimaginable violence, leaving behind questions that cannot easily be answered. The tragedy reverberated through Hollywood, through the media, and through every circle that had known them, creating a profound sense of collective grief. Their legacy, however, is not solely defined by the horror of that night, but also by the lives they touched, the love they shared, and the unwavering dedication they gave to their son, Nick, despite the immense challenges he presented. In the quiet aftermath, the surviving family members faced a world forever altered. Each memory, each familiar room, became a testament to lives abruptly ended. Friends recalled the laughter that once filled the Reiners' home, the countless evenings of guidance, discussion, and familial warmth. These recollections, interspersed with the horror of what had transpired, painted a portrait of a family caught between love and the limitations of human control. The story highlights how even the deepest affection and the most diligent care can meet limits when faced with forces like mental illness, addiction, and unresolved trauma. For many, the tragedy serves as both a warning and a moment of reflection, reminding us that no amount of privilege, foresight, or effort can fully shield loved ones from unforeseen catastrophe. Public attention remained intense, the details of the night meticulously analyzed by investigators, journalists, and commentators alike. Surveillance footage, forensic reports, and eyewitness accounts were examined repeatedly, each element offering a glimpse into the complexity of human behavior under stress. Nick's calm movements after the crime, the use of family resources for legal defense, and his history of addiction and instability created a narrative that was as compelling as it was disturbing. The media dissected every element, and yet, for those closest to the Reiners, the story was less about spectacle and more about mourning a family destroyed from within, grappling with the incomprehensible intersection of love, failure, and tragedy. The broader societal impact of the Reiner story cannot be understated. Conversations about mental health, substance abuse, and the ethical dimensions of familial responsibility became prominent in public discourse. Experts and observers debated how intervention strategies might have altered outcomes, how addiction can shape behavior, and the extent to which environment, upbringing, and care influence human decisions. The Reiners' experience became a touchstone, illustrating the delicate balance between care and autonomy, between intervention and the recognition of personal limits. Their story resonated far beyond their immediate circle, prompting reflection on the fragility of life and the profound responsibility inherent in raising a child in a complex, high-pressure environment. At the same time, the narrative emphasizes resilience and enduring love. Rob and Michelle's decades of devotion, their patience in the face of repeated setbacks, and their commitment to Nick's recovery underscore the profound capacity for parental care. Every effort to guide, to nurture, to instill structure, even when met with resistance or relapse, reflects an extraordinary moral and emotional investment. Their lives illustrate that dedication and love are valuable in themselves, even when outcomes are tragic. The lessons of their perseverance, of striving to provide guidance and support despite daunting obstacles, resonate with anyone who has sought to care for a loved one against overwhelming odds. The tragedy also invites viewers to contemplate ethical and emotional complexities. The use of family resources to secure a legal defense, the tension between justice and compassion, and the challenges of adjudicating acts influenced by addiction and mental health all create a narrative rich with moral nuance. These elements, while part of the public record, also serve as an emotional and intellectual mirror for audiences, prompting introspection about how we understand accountability, responsibility, and love in circumstances where human behavior defies simple categorization. As one reflects on the Reiner's story, the emotional gravity is compounded by the contrast between the lives they lived and the manner of their deaths. Rob, a master storyteller, and Michelle, a nurturing presence, dedicated themselves to cultivating environments of growth, creativity, and love. Their efforts were extensive and thoughtful, yet they ultimately could not prevent the destruction wrought by forces both internal and external. The tragedy is therefore both a personal and universal story. It is the heartbreak of a family destroyed, and it is a meditation on the limits of human intervention, the fragility of life, and the enduring complexity of human relationships. For viewers, the story of Rob and Michelle Reiner offers not only sorrow but also reflection. It is a reminder that life is unpredictable, that love and effort, while essential, cannot guarantee safety or outcomes. It invites contemplation of how society, families, and individuals can recognize and respond to warning signs, the importance of mental health awareness, and the ways in which early intervention and consistent support may alter trajectories, even if not always successfully. At the same time, it celebrates the humanity of Rob and Michelle, their patience, compassion, and moral courage, highlighting the enduring impact of lives lived with dedication and care, even in the shadow of tragedy. As the story concludes, the audience is left with a mixture of grief and awe, mourning the lives lost while appreciating the depth of parental devotion and resilience. Rob and Michelle Reiner's legacy is multifaceted, a public record of professional achievement and personal warmth, and a private testament to tireless love, hope, and the limits of human control. Their final hours, though tragic, underscore enduring truths about compassion, responsibility, and the complexities of family life. It is a narrative that encourages introspection, empathy, and a renewed appreciation for the fragility and preciousness of human connection. In reflecting on their story, viewers are prompted to consider the profound ways in which love, guidance, and care shape our lives and the lives of those around us, even when faced with outcomes that defy expectation, offering lessons that resonate far beyond the immediate tragedy.